Hey guys, Dave and Len here. Welcome to Wargame Chat. Today we're going to talk about the miniature games we like. I'll go with the first one that I liked was more of a role-playing game, but D&D, like you said, Chainmail. That one I had a lot of fun with when I was a kid. You played Chainmail a lot too, didn't you?
I liked the individual skirmish one. What is unique about this is that you just roll the dice, and the result is you either hit or missed it. As a result is we were actually running melee tournaments, melee battles, where you had like 100 figures per side, and no problems because you just roll for each guy in combat. You knock off a few each turn. There's a few less guys around. Mm-hmm. So that's why I remember that favorably.
Yeah, another one that we used to play a long time ago, my dad played it mostly, was Tactica and Warcry. I played Warcry later. Both of those were great ancient games. Tactica had a lot of stuff where there was restrictions on movement and a lot of falling back and stuff. It was actually a pretty realistic Ancients game. And then Warcry was the most fun. The edition that was played out here was a home edition. It's just basically they took the Warcry rules and added a bunch of new rules to it, so it's kind of a house thing, but that was a lot of fun. It had, like, with the elephants could go berserk, and you'd roll to see what clock direction it would move in, and then it would charge in that direction and might charge its own troops and stuff, that type of stuff. I'm doing something like that in the video game I'm making right now. The berserk phase is kind of cool. But yeah, those were the two ancient ones I liked, and both of those so with these ancient rule sets, the ones that we played back in the day, these, in order to get the full effect, you had to have about 500 to 1,000 figures on a side. And these are like epic battles that we would play. This is back in the days when you could buy a painted 25mm figure for about 65 cents or an unpainted one for less than a quarter. So, I mean, back then it was economical to have these huge armies. With the crazy prices on miniatures now, where they're charging more for plastic miniatures than even metal ones and stuff, I mean, there's no way you can play those anymore unless you got a lot of money. I mean, I guess you could buy like Old Glory figures, which are a little bit cheaper, but to put together like an army with 1,000 figures in it would run you about, just in unpainted lead about $2,000. So, and then you got to spend all the time painting the 1,000 figures too. So there's too much involved to have it a big game anymore. My dad still has tons of old 25mm figures, so we can still have these enormous ancient games and stuff. What are some of the other miniature or games you like playing, or periods or whatever?
Okay, I was thinking Column and Square with Napoleonics. There was a time in which virtually every period you only had one set of rules. But that's nowadays, any period you have at least a dozen rule sets. And they're all the same practically at times. Because you can only march your infantry so far. And all I remember is a lot of games I played with that. And I still remember we had one wargame club in which we were expelled from the club room. And I and another guy named Howard, we were playing like miniature games every time we met, screw everything else, these Napoleonics. And so we played it on the floor of one room. And, we had, like, these two rugs were like you couldn't pass. And it was strange playing that, because now, all of a sudden, the flanks were open. You had a whole different set of strategies. And, of course, he beat me, because he always beats me.
Yeah, speaking of playing games on the floor, I remember there was one that my dad used to play on the floor in the basement. He painted part of the basement floor blue for Fletcher Pratt's Naval Rules.
Yes.
The one where you try to eyeball the range, and if you got it right, then you hit the ship.
I think we also tried a version with sailing ships and everything, because I think, what was it, Don't Give Up the Ship. They tried, we once played it, where for gunnery you used Fletcher Pratt rules. And one thing, somebody said that, with the Fletcher, he was writing a miniature naval war set. If you use the Fletcher Pratt gunnery system, it's just so simple. You just write it out. You estimate the range, and then you hit, then you determine damage. You don't have to determine modifiers for range or sea state conditions or blah blah blah. Like I think it was the General Quarters, the ultra complex one.
He had wrote I don't know how many, but at least one science fiction novel. I read it. It was from like really long ago. I mean, where I think this was before people had TV sets even in their houses or something. But I read it and it was actually quite good.
Yeah,
can't remember what it was called.
I remember it was written in the 1920s.
Right. Yeah.
And it was so strange because he's talking about they. Telephones were rare in those days.
And he was talking about something where I think he was trying to refer to like a television or like a CRT monitor or something, and he would call them view screens in this because this was from the 1920s. So. Yeah,
I mean, he was writing in that. One thing, 2 weeks ago my knees were hurting, and then I found out that it was Fletcher Pratt's 124th birthday. Yes, we played on our knees too much.
Yeah, everyone played Fletcher Pratt on the floor, on their knees and stuff.
Yeah, because I think with the sailing ship one, we put it on a large table because we'd have enough space. Because the gun range was shorter, even at the same Fletcher Pratt scale.
There was another game that people used to play on the floor a lot too. I only played it like once or twice. It was called Tractics, where you had these big tanks, and you'd use the entire room to play the game. You'd put them on the floor and stuff. That was from, I believe, first edition was from Guidon Games, and then TSR took it over. I always wondered what was the deal with Guidon Games and TSR, because Chainmail, the original, was Guidon Games also. So I don't know if that's what they called their business before they changed the name to TSR.
I'll get into that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. With Tractics, this is another example. At the time, that was practically the only game on armored warfare that you could find. Mm-hmm. And I think there was the original Tractics, which is very complex, and then they created a streamlined version. And I never tried the streamlined version. Mm. And I remember once where we had a system where someone pointed out that he found, this is exciting, the production numbers for the German army. And what we did was we rolled, and we also had percentage dice. We rolled to see, if you had 15 tanks, we rolled to see which types of tanks they were. And as a result of, Tiger tanks are only 4% of the production run. So we end up mostly, the Americans were mostly fighting Panzer IVs.
So the Americans actually stood a chance then.
Yeah. And I think once when we actually rolled for a Tiger tank, it was like, what's that one, the super tank?
Tiger 2.
No, Bolo or something.
No, the Ferdinand, which I believe, or the elephant, I think they called it, or something, or the mouse.
That science fiction series where you...
Ogre.
Ogre, yeah. It was like when the Tiger 1 came on, it was like Ogre. Mm-hmm. You shoot at it, everything bounces off, and but it moves slowly, so eventually you had to surround it, because you only get one Tiger tank. Yeah, because I think somebody in Chicago wrote that. What it was is that the original games that Gaiax and a few other people wrote was published by
Guidon Games.
Yeah, and this is a publisher in, I think, Maine or New England. He ran a hobby shop too. Don Lowry or something. Well, at a certain point, right before D&D or right after, a few years after, he decided, he wasn't making money on this, so he moved to the West Coast and became a sports writer. Mm. And I think what it is that a lot of since he abandoned it, he allowed like Gaiax and others to publish their own games. He just gave away their copyrights. Mm. So that's why TSI reprinted some of the old stuff.
Gotcha. So. Interesting. Another game I used to play a lot was Flames of War, the 15 millimeter World War II game. It wasn't the most historically accurate. Actually, it wasn't historically accurate at all, really, other than maybe the armor penetrations or so on and so forth. It was kind of like a Warhammer, except in World War II. In some ways, you had opposed die rolls. You'd roll to try to penetrate someone's armor or to hit someone's armor, and then they would roll to try and make it bounce, and then you would do a firepower check, and the saves for like the infantry and stuff were ridiculous. I mean, the infantry, I've never seen. I played probably 100 games of that, maybe 200 games, and I've never seen the infantry on one side completely wiped out because they'd have like a 3+ save. So no matter 3+ save if they're going to ground, I believe it was. And so it was really hard to kill infantry, even with tanks and stuff. It was difficult. The only surefire way to do it was like with close assaults and stuff.
Oh, I think TSR had some kind of armored combat miniature system. And actually, I played it a few times. It wasn't too bad. But the thing I like more about it, it's a resource. Because it seemed like he had every vehicle that every army had. He had every order of battle that every armor had. I mean, if you want to know what the Romanian regiments, how large, a Romanian infantry regiment, how many troops they had, how much artillery support they had, blah, blah, blah. He had it there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, with the Romanians, if they had Pack 40s with them in most games, they did well. But if they didn't have Pack 40s and they just had crappier big guns with them, they stood really no chance.
Yeah. So, trying to think.
Another one we used to play was... what was that called? It was a Civil War miniatures game. Johnny Red we used to play.
That wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it was all right.
A few times, so that wasn't too bad.
I think I played that about 5 times or something. Yeah, that wasn't bad at all. It was okay.
Isn't there something with that? The first edition at times was confusing, but there was a second edition.
Oh, I didn't even know about
Everybody likes whatever problems. I only played a few times. Didn't have much problems with it, but I was thinking, I'm not familiar with American Civil War games, so I'm not can't fair judge of that one. So,
yeah, I was just going through the garage today. Remember when we played Gettysburg 150? I just saw that in the garage while I was going looking for some stuff.
Oh, there's one. Speaking of Naval Cabinet, Decision Games had a system.
A miniature system?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I tried it, and it wasn't too bad. I kind of liked it.
That's good.
And what was strange is I tried once just Atlantic convoys versus U-boats. Just use that, and it was a lot of fun. For some reason, it seemed like everything was kind of simple. And they also had, what was unique, was a fleet morale level. If you lost a few ships, then you had to book out.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you hit the admiral ship, well, the fleet's mostly gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's and I think what was Harpoon? That's another one.
I remember Harpoon. I only played that once. I think it was just once. It was at Little War. Some guy was putting on a game, and I joined the game. And the guy didn't really know how to play the game himself, so he's like looking up rules the whole time and stuff. And then he just like gave up and walked away and left the rule book with me and the other guy, both of us who had never played the game before. So we're poking through the rule book trying to figure out how to play, and it just turned into a disaster. I think the game itself is actually good. It's just I had such a bad experience with it. I know there's an expansion to it too.
Well, one thing about Harpoon is that we found out that the surface combat, air, surface one, is basically the American forces overwhelm any opposition. Mm-hmm. So it was no fun. But we played the anti-sub warfare. That's when it was great guns. Because I remember a few times I took the infamous Alpha Russian sub, the Alpha class. And I started hunting down those boomers, and that's when it worked out well. It showed it, it was a complex game, but I think with Harpoon was that you never meant to have 4 or 5 ships per side. So
there was one game similar to that I had. It was called Shipwreck. And I read the rules, and it seemed pretty reasonable. And so the guy I played it with, though, he had been former Navy, and he insisted on changing all these rules and adding features to the game which weren't even there and stuff. So after we played it a few times, I thought to myself, I'm like, we're not even playing Shipwreck here, so I kind of gave up on it. He was the only person I knew of who wanted to play it. No one else wanted to play. So
General Quarters was infamous for its attention to detail. Now, it's World War II naval combat, and we kind of forgive that because, if you're having something like the Bismarck versus the Hood and the Prince of Wales, okay, you shoot, you determine you hit, you determine where you hit, penetration, damage, well, you're going through several, 7-8 steps for each shot fired. Or you have the graph speed versus those three cruisers. And at one convention, the guy running it, he wasn't familiar with it. At some point, me and my opposition kind of took over because we played this before. And he was shocked at the end that we actually enjoyed ourselves and wanted to play again. But only if he would really be the referee.
Speaking of Bismarck, on No Enemies Here, Wargame News, they just had a new episode today, and Ricardo Massini had a speech on there about the Bismarck and stuff. It was pretty good, so check out that episode of No Enemies Here when you get a chance.
No Enemies Here? What is that?
It's a YouTube channel that has Wargame News and stuff. I do a little clip for it on most weeks and stuff.
I got it.
They talk about new games that are out there, new videos people have made, new reviews and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, all right, but that's like I said, I can nowadays get overwhelmed. I'm trying to think of any skirmish game rules. Because there's always been a lot of homemade skirmish games.
The miniature games I usually don't like. I usually don't like the black powder ones, but Johnny Reb was good. And for some reason, Napoleonic games, I don't get into them. Once in a while, you'll have a good game or something, but it just doesn't appeal to me that much. Lately, I've been playing a lot of modern warfare, zombie stuff. With the Walking Dead All-Out War and with my own homebrew mass combat rules. And then I've been playing around with 5 Parsecs from Home, the solitaire science fiction miniature rules. That's cool. And you get to use all your existing science fiction miniatures, which is good because I got all sorts of sci-fi stuff that I've never even tried. So I'll get to use it all in that eventually.
Okay. So.
All right, that's all I got. You got anything?
Yeah.
All right, good seeing you guys. We'll have a new topic for next week. Have a good evening.